Well, it's Friday. You know what time it is. It's time to deploy. I'm joined here, as always, with Jim Pelletier, and we've had a busy week, Jim, eh?
Yeah, totally. You guys had a late webinar last night and some really great stuff happening. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, no rest for the wicked. We've been pretty busy and talking to a lot of customers. We've had some really good conversations, can't words, especially around deployments. How are things on the engineering side?
Yeah, good. Grinding through the features, getting things out. I think we had some great stuff released this week. I haven't actually looked this week.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so for context, I don't think it's telling tales out of school, but we're working a lot on the sort of the reliability of deployments more and
Mm,
more. And so we've
yeah.
added features like step retries and step timeouts, and we've been working a lot on the resiliency of deployments and deployment processes in particular. And we're also working on scalability, and we're doing all these like great innovations around like making the product just that much better. We're polishing and polishing and polishing. So I think it's great. I think we're doing a lot of really cool things. And I think that we've got a really, really solid list of features that are coming out. And I think customers are going to be really surprised once they see them. Would that be
Yeah, yeah,
your
no, I
take as
think
well?
I, I think that's exactly right. I'm seeing like the our team's doing some great stuff around making the network retries more reliable and even some new stuff around just scaling up the number of things a single Octopus server can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely rolling out slowly, and the customers aren't super aware of it yet. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, reach out. There's stuff we can turn on and make everything go faster.
Or
Mm.
run cloud, maybe. I guess that's
Yeah,
another way
yeah,
of getting the latest and
yeah,
greatest. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we're constantly shipping stuff. So just to kind of bring this a little bit home here, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen through the magic of software, and let's take a look at some of the things that we're describing here. So for those who aren't aware, you can take a look at what's new by visiting octopus.com/what's new. Pretty obvious URL. And when you go there, you'll see the latest release, which we talked about last week, 2023.3. We're always pushing out, I guess, builds as well, like minor builds, and you can do comparisons. I don't know if folks have seen this before, but you can basically compare some versions against earlier versions, right? And we actually, so if I take an earlier version here and we compare this to say one of the later versions, we auto generate the diffs, don't we? Like as part of
Yeah.
the process. So let me actually do this because I don't think we've published any notes that are relevant for 2023.4 yet. So I may be actually pulling up something that isn't actually going to work per se. Yeah. So this is what's new relative to those version differences. So yeah. But if you hit one where we can generate those highlights, it will actually show those differences. So if I come down late enough, let's say 2022.3, and then we, do a delta here, it's going to auto generate this list. But anyways, lots and lots of stuff coming. Worth noting, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of it's new features that you need to enable or turn on early access for and that kind of stuff too. So
Yep.
keep your
Yep. We
eyes
expose
peeled.
that as well. Yeah.
Mm.
We use a lot of feature flags for that as well, which is kind of cool. So for those who don't know, we're turning things on and off with customers. So if you're all compelled to jump on board, I guess is what we're saying. Let us know. Moving on to the Octopus news of late, we've been doing a lot of work talking to folks in the industry. As I said, we've talked to a gentleman by the name of Matt Ash, who is a staff and DevOps engineer at a leading HR software platform provider. So take that for what it is. But basically, we interviewed Matt and talked to him about DevOps and his journey with automation and what he's doing around platform engineering and all that great stuff. So if you're curious at all, you can check out this blog post that was written by Joanna and talking to Matt about DevOps, etc. We talked a little bit about Andy's recent blogs that he's been writing, and he's been very busy talking about tenanted deployments. And I think we may have mentioned one of his previous ones previously, but this was written on September 11th, which is how SaaS tenanted deployments would look without automation. So in his previous one, he talked about how global tenanted deployments would look without automation. Now he's looking at a more specific instance, which is SaaS tenanted deployments. And so basically, he's building the case for like, listen, if you're not using Octopus for tenanted deployments, especially for for SaaS based solutions, you're going to have a bad time using the South Park meme. So if you're all curious about that, you can go check that out. In addition to that, we've been really, really busy, as you made reference to earlier. Our webinars have been kicking. We earlier today, we haven't updated our website yet, but earlier today, Ian and Ships co-hosted a webinar entitled "New Features for Tenanted Deployments at Scale." So this was a really good one because not only did they talk about tenanted deployments, they talk about multi-tenancy, etc. They also showed off that not only the new features, but Ships in particular showed off what's coming. So that was really cool around Tentacle, for example. So if you're wanting to see an example of kind of like, we're trying to get early and often feedback, this is the webinar to watch. So it's up on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, as the kids say. And later on in the webinar, you can see Ships talking about how, recovery from communication errors with Tentacle, et cetera, et cetera. She shows off a demo. So this is basically, if Tentacle is having trouble connecting to Octopus, what are the reconciliation steps based on machine policies, for example? And so these and other examples on demos were done by Ships and Ian as part of this webinar, and you can find that now on our YouTube channel, which is great.
Love a demo.
Yep. So there you go. So I love it when we have webinars that feature new stuff. And I have no problem talking about new stuff, so that's good. And if you're at all curious, you can check out octopus.com/webinars, and there you'll find a whole bunch of webinars that are coming up for September, and I think we're creeping into October now. So we've got a bunch of content coming down. We've got Kit talking about Kubernetes. I've got the town hall that I'll be hosting. We've got Clear Measure yet again, talking about smoke testing. I've mentioned this before. We've recently kicked off a 101 series. So 101 is basically like the sort of bare essentials of getting to know Octopus. And I did a 101 series again at 4 a.m. talking about what is Octopus and how it works and all that great stuff. So if you're all curious, you can take a look at that. Bob did his webinar last week about rollback strategies, etc. So again, that's at youtube.com/Octopus Deploy. That's our channel there. And we've got a bunch of great content there. You'll also find them listed on our page as well. So they're all listed down here. So great stuff. We've been very busy. So
awesome.
To your point. All right, well, getting on with the news, we have a lot of news to discuss, especially around .NET and Visual Studio, and there's been a lot of interesting developments there. So most recently, .NET 8 Release Candidate 1 is now available. Now, whenever you have a release candidate, you're creeping slowly but surely towards the release. And so it's not lost on me that we have .NET Conf mentioned at the top here. And then we have, the .NET blog in sort of close proximity. So for those who are looking at this, yes, .NET Conf will be the event, I believe, that everyone, I think, knows this is where .NET will be talked about in great detail. And that, I believe, is where we'll see the announcement of .NET 8. I believe it might actually ship before that. I think their calendar is publicly available on GitHub. But this should give you a sense of what's coming. So .NET 8, Release Candidate 1, is now available. Lots of improvements. This release includes a new AOT mode for both Android and WASM. So that's cool. System.text.json improvements. So that's always important, especially working with JSON, the sort of lingua franca of web stacks, I guess, connecting to remote services. Azure Managed Identity support for containers. So lots of stuff coming down the pipe. And to that end, there was a recent blog post that was written, by Stephen Taub, who's a performance wonk at Microsoft. He writes these sort of tomes of prose where he talks about all the new stuff that's come out with .NET, and he has not disappointed. It almost deserves its own tab here, basically. So this is the latest one called Performance Improvements in .NET 8. And you may notice how small the scroll bar is. You can see it just up here in the top right-hand corner. So this is like probably his longest article I've seen. This one made the rounds at Octopus. We were all discussing this internally, but if you ever wanted to know about all the new things that are in .NET 8, especially around performance, this is the blog post. I'm here, still hitting page down, page down, page down, page down, page down. Like this is a lot. I'm still going, still going, still haven't hit the comments yet. Still
How do you
going.
find time to read?
I don't know. I guess you just do. You know, people are going to
Just do
obviously
it.
navigate to the areas that they care the most about. So,
Yeah.
but Stephen is well known for having these sort of just huge articles, and this one is not a disappointment at all. In fact, I'm like I made reference to this earlier today. I'm like, listen, I got it, I got it. You guys made a lot of improvements. Okay, so I'll take your word for it. You know. So this one was the most interesting one for me, which was tiering and dynamic PGO or PGO. So basically, this is a way in which the jitter runs at runtime. So when the CLR does its thing and jitting is involved, just-in-time compilation, there's this concept known as tiering. And so the way that they describe it is, you know, kind of like setting the stage. For many years, the .NET method would only ever be compiled once. On first invocation of the method, the JIT would kick in and generate code for that method. And then that invocation and every subsequent one would be used of that generated code. And so what they do now is they actually they denote that JITted code with a tier, and they'll elevate like from tier 0 to tier 1 to tier 2, etc. Based on the result set of instrumentation that they have, in addition to the I guess what is happening in the background to a certain extent. So lots of really interesting sort of observations there. So one example that he cites, which I thought was cool, is like if it's already JITted, but it can take a look at something like, hey, if it's static read-only bool, they'll actually convert, the JIT will convert that value to const bool. So const bool will be the new value in the JITted compilation. And so what he's talking about here is they talk about this, so PGO or profile guided optimization is this notion that if you add a little bit, if you sprinkle in a little bit of instrumentation as part of your JIT, and you see how it's run in the previous runs, via dynamic PGO, PGO, I guess if you want to call it. I don't know what the kids call it. So you get better semantics for jitting. Now this was turned off. This was first previewed in .NET 6. I don't think a lot of people knew this, but this was off by default. It was improved in .NET 7, and in .NET 8 it is now on by default. So .NET 8 is going to be the first version of .NET which has dynamic PGO. I'm hoping that's what they call it. PGO or PGO, I don't know. In .NET 8 is going to have this on by default, and I love his reference. The one character PR to enable it might be the most valuable PR in all of .NET 8. So here's the PR and enabled tier PGO by default, and so no description, just emojis. Let it go through. Files changed. I'm assuming this one would go from true to false. Yeah, there you go. Goes from not enabled to enabled. So awesome. And so I think this is great. And if you're at all interested about reading, you know, if you have trouble sleeping, perhaps, I don't know if, you know, this would be the article for you, but this was interesting. So there's the sort of control flow that talks about this so if you hit a .NET method, if it's not pre-jitted or it's jitted, R2R means ready to run. So this is basically an AOT sort of thing. So if it's pre-jitted, not pre-jitted, go to T0, not optimized, not instrumented, then T0, tier 0 instrumented, and then tier 1. So they have this concept of tiering as part of this. So this is one very small but detailed example of the level of detail that Stephen goes through in his articles around performance. And so if you're at all curious, maybe you're in a fight with your coworkers about performance. Maybe you say it works this way, your coworker says it works that way. This is probably the way to end that argument. So .NET improvements in .NET 8, which also ties back to the announcement around .NET 8 release candidate 1.
This
So,
is
yeah.
the source of truth straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I've seen many presentations by Stephen, and they are not light. They are very dense. They're like concrete, you know, just the particulate matter. It's very hard to get through, but, you know, it's got a solid foundation, you know, sort of thing. So, yeah, I think it's great. So, of the innovations in here, nothing really jumped out at me because it's mostly just evolutionary. And nothing I thought was hugely valuable. Like I'm assuming, all the stuff that they wanted to get out in terms of announcements are already out. There's nothing really rocket science, earth-shattering
Mm.
news coming in the RC, but it's just the fact that they're on the RC train now, which is great.
Yeah, nice.
Also, speaking of .NET Conf, largest .NET event hosted online, November 14th to 16th. Be part of this. A company that rhymes with Octopus Deploy may be a part of this event, possibly, maybe. So this is a virtual event. There's going to be lots of streaming, lots of awesomeness. You can add it to your calendar. You can host an event if you want for a community sort of meetup, etc. And so you can follow the hashtag .NETConf if you want, but definitely keep track of this. Is available at .NETConf.net. And I
Doesn't look
mention that
like we
because you'll
know.
probably, sorry?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, it doesn't look like we know when the speakers and stuff are announced yet.
No, they haven't announced the agenda yet.
Yeah.
I believe that will come shortly. It's November. Come on, we've got a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. All right, so moving on to other news. This was an article that kind of, I thought, ran under the radar. This was really interesting to me because I think it addressed a major sort of concern I always had with updating VS as a non-admin. So the title of this article is sort of, I think the reason why this flew under the radar is because the title doesn't really reveal what it's really saying. So the title is Balancing User Updates with Security Best Practices. It was written by Christine. And basically they talk about how, when you're a developer and you're running VS and, you want to get the latest updates for VS, you can, right? Because you got to do so as admin, right? We touch the registry, we touch certain files, we update DLLs, etc. during an update. And so as a result, if you're non-admin, which is most corporate environments these days, a lot, I guess, you're not allowed to update VS. And so as a result, and this is what Christine says in her blog post, up until now, we've had a bit of a catch-22 situation with respect to VS Code, the VS installer rather, which is the tool that installs and updates the VS product. The installer requires admin permissions to use because it needs to write to quote unquote protected areas of Windows, the registry. However, if the user running the installer doesn't have the required elevated permissions, then they are blocked from using the installer's functionality, blah, 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 blah. So what they're announcing is standard users can now update and modify Visual Studio. This to me is massive. And I don't know why this isn't getting more attention. I was like, yes, thank you, finally. So we are excited to announce a new feature designed specifically for developers who have limited permissions on their machine. The purpose of this feature is to give developers with restricted permissions better control of their development environment by enabling them to update or modify their installation at will. In fact, this feature is the solution to one of our top developer community reported issues. And so Christine goes into details about this, but basically you can now perform the initial install of the installer. That's a lot of I's in that sentence. Acquiring the installer for the first time on any client machine will always require admin permissions. That they have to you have to have an admin delegate control basically, and then configure the allow standard user control policy. This is a group policy for AD. Configuring VS policies will always require admin permissions too. So if you have an admin, get to know them, maybe buy them a coffee, have them turn on this group policy, and hopefully you'll have the ability to update this. So what's also interesting is that this standard user update capability applies to all versions of Visual Studio 2017 and above, provided that the latest installer is installed on the machine. So that's wonderful. Like, it's not for latest and greatest. It's back to VS 2017. So I don't know why this didn't get more news. Like, to me, this is like 2 comments. That's all it is, 2 comments. Right? And they're like, great, awesome. For me, I was like, yes, thank God. Because every time I would do a workshop, or every time I would write an article, I'd be like, yeah, just run the installer, download, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I can't. I'm on a corporate laptop. They don't give me that right to do so. So this to me is a huge win for .NET devs and devs in general who use VS. So I don't know why this didn't get more traction. Maybe the title was wrong, or maybe people saw the title and they're like, whatever, I'm not going to read this. But when you read it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. What are your
One of
thoughts
those
on this?
sort of boring things that but is also going to be awesome.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you're a writer guy. Come on. I mean, you're
Yeah.
like, who
I don't
cares,
know.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
and I'm on a
Dead
Mac,
to
so
me. Don't care.
don't even have elevated mode.
That's right. Well, you do, but maybe. All right.
I think
So,
it's just running now.
VS 2022 17.8 Preview 2 has arrived. So, Mads here has done a video describing some of the features. And you can go and check this out if you're at all curious. I'm not sure what Mads is saying, but there you go. And so they highlight a lot of the things in here. I went through the list here. Nothing really grabbed my attention. So there's various improvements, et cetera, et cetera. So, go check it out for yourself if you're at all curious. Another preview of another thing. Moving on to GitHub, introducing auto triage rules for Dependabot. Dependabot it's got that love hate relationship, right? I don't know. Are you guys using Dependabot on your team?
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah. I don't deal with it
Okay.
directly myself. Yeah.
I know it's got one of those love hate relationships. Like it's either you love it a lot and then you hate it a lot. It's like your mom who calls you every week, like, why don't you talk to your mother? Like Dependabot's like that. You get these emails all the time. Like Dependabot found all these sort of updates, and you constantly get updated, etc. And so what GitHub has been doing, and you've seen a lot of this recently, is GitHub has been posting a lot of updates to Dependabot, and this is the latest sort of, I guess, foray of updates. So auto triage rules for Dependabot. This basically allows you to turn off all the alerts that you see with Dependabot. So you can kind of turn these down. So auto triage rules are a powerful tool that help you reduce false positives. And this is the big one for me, alert fatigue substantially. Because a lot of times you're like, I get it, Dependabot. Everything's out of date. Stop bugging me, So while better managing your alerts at scale. So wonderful addition. If you're not using Dependabot, basically what this does is it walks your dependency tree. It does pretty much what you think. It walks your dependency tree, and if any of those dependencies live in a well-known location like remote source like npm, etc., we'll watch for updates, etc. As second an update comes out, we'll send you a notification, and also in some cases generate an auto-generated PR and let you know, like, hey, here's a PR to update your dependencies. It's supported across a variety of languages: TypeScript, JavaScript, C#, Go, etc., etc. So it's a good thing. Moving right along, CD Events joins the Hacktoberfest celebration. So Hacktoberfest is put on every October, and CD Events, for those who don't know, is basically a protocol description for continuous delivery products or deployment products that raise consistent events so that you can respond to them accordingly in a consistent manner. So you can find this, I think it's CD Events is .dev. Yes, that's it. So CD Events is the protocol or specification, whatever you want to define it, for CD events. So anytime that a CD product generates an event like, hey, deployment succeeded, blah, 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 you can take a look and the docs if you're all curious. It defines a set of core events and common metadata associated with this. And so that does deployments, for example, see, an example of that through this. This is what CD Events basically does in terms of that specification. And so they're joining as part of the Hacktoberfest. And so if you're at all keen, you can join and sync up with the contributors there and participate on hacking. So they're trying to build out libraries and things like that. So these are some of the events. To give you an example, like when a pipeline runs, raise an event. When a task is complete, raise an event. And so you do different events, like one started, one finished, et cetera, et cetera. So these are consistent, common core events that if you write a listener, you only have to write that listener once and only once, and then you can, in theory, have that portability of that listener cross-cut various CD products, for example. So,
yeah, interesting. I hadn't heard of that one.
Rustover. Here's your new IDE, Jim. What's that?
I said I hadn't heard of that CD Events before. I think I'm having a bit of connection slowness. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right. That's fine. We'll just keep going. So, Rustover, a standalone Rust IDE by JetBrains. So here you go, Jim. You've been wanting a new IDE, and you've been wanting a new programming language.
Mm-hmm. This is it. This is a sign.
That's right. So when will there be a Rust IDE? This is the question that I guess JetBrains has been getting for a long time. And so they've announced Rust Rover rather, not over, Rust Rover. I don't get the name. Maybe this sounds better in a different language or translate differently, but Rust Rover is a brand new IDE from JetBrains. JetBrains makes a lot of IDEs for REST developers. And I think they're leveraging a lot of the foundation that is built into Rider or to Goland or to their, various Java products, which they have many, Kotlin, etc. And so they talk a lot about providing this for Rust. And so if you want integration with crates, if you want integration with the debugger, this would possibly be the IDE for you. So that's Rust Rover. And you can check it out more on the blog there. I really don't have much of an opinion on it, but there you go. And then finally, I think I was told this earlier today. Fiddler, the well-known proxy trace, 20 years old soon. I can't remember when, but it's going to be 20 years old soon. And I basically told a little bit of a love story on a different podcast for this tool. I think that Fiddler is a wonderful tool. It's been part of my developer arsenal, tool belt, whatever you want to call it, for years. And I think that if you're not utilizing a tool like Fiddler to, watch what's happening on the wire, you really owe it to yourself, because most apps I know use the internet and use the network. And so it's really important to see what actually permeates on the wire, because oftentimes what you see is not what you get, meaning the code that you think is the code that's running may not generate the HTTP requests that you think they do. And so a tool like Fiddler allows you to peer into, or gives you insight into those aspects. And in addition to that, Fiddler is a great tool for composing HTTP requests, for seeing where there might be bloat. There's a huge extension plugin library for Fiddler Classic as well. I use Fiddler Everywhere, which runs on Mac, etc. So yeah, just awesome tool, and keep promoting it there as part of their ongoing battle to help developers, I guess. That's a very sort of romantic way of saying it. So anyway.
Makes me
there you
feel
go.
old.
That's right. I already feel old. I don't need a tool turning 20 to make me feel old. I already feel old, believe me. Anyways, that's the latest edition of Deploy on Friday. Thanks for joining us. If you happen to stumble upon this video, please feel free to subscribe. Let us know if there's a tool or tech news piece that you would like us to talk about. But until then, we will talk to you next week. On behalf of Jim and myself, thanks for joining, and we will see you again here on Deploy on Friday. Take care.